Welcome to the U.S. Manufacturing Today podcast, your hub of information about the U.S. manufacturing and distribution industry. Brought to you by Variable, the on-demand labor solution revitalizing and optimizing your operation, enabling just-in-time response to demand, more efficient production, and lower cost per unit. And now your host and head of reindustrialization at Variable, Matt Horine.
Welcome back to U.S. Manufacturing Today, the podcast powered by Variable, where we talk with the leaders, innovators, and changemakers shaping the future of American industry, along with providing regular updates on the state of the industry, the changing landscape, policies, and more. Today's guest is rethinking how we bring manufacturing home, not with brute force or protectionism, but with precision, sustainability, and strategic vision. I'm thrilled to welcome Caden Gennerman, the founder of Dusty Shores, a company helping outdoor brands reshore their manufacturing to the U.S. without blowing up their operations or their budgets. From cost modeling and pilot production to matching brands with eco-conscious American manufacturers, Dusty Shores is creating a realistic path for brands that want to build at home and tell better stories. Caden, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to be on here. We started Dusty Shores not too long ago, actually. I started it almost right before the tariffs were announced that they're happening, which was almost some of the best business timing I think I've ever had in my life. I started it simply because I've been an avid outdoorsman my entire life and grew up in the outdoor industry. My dad was involved in it the entire time, and he helped several companies design products as well and build products that people could market. And back then, a lot of outdoor products were made in America. And as time went on, margins got cut and people started moving to Taiwan and stuff. So I remember the products made back then by companies like Outdoor Research and Black Diamond and so many other companies that were made here in America. And then watching them move over to China and Taiwan, it makes sense from a company perspective. But when you're talking about an outdoor brand, you're thinking of something sustainable. Like Patagonia is always donating so much money to the outdoor programs in the United States and preserving our wildlife. And so I think it's important for outdoor brands to also look at how their manufacturing is affecting the outdoor space that their products are made for.
Yeah, that's a big thing, like the mission alignment, right? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to cater to that audience and those types of consumers without actually living the values. So it's a really big piece of it. Big question for me, what was the moment you realized there was a gap between brands wanting to reshore and actually being able to do it? And follow-up to that is what makes outdoor brands such a compelling place to start? I know you mentioned you're an outdoorsman, but how did those two things match up?
I definitely noticed there's a disconnect because I feel like a lot of brands go at it the wrong way, especially when they start looking at it. It shouldn't be, okay, how can we make a product for the same price in the United States as we can in Taiwan? What's the price difference? It should be, okay, what does this product make our brand look like is what I think is a big thing, especially for outdoor brands. That's the reason I looked at it was, if you want your outdoor brand to look like a good outdoor brand, in my opinion, you should be looking at ethics, sustainability, and how you're protecting your own environment, and also supporting local jobs, supporting the people that use your products. And so I was like, if there's a disconnect there, might as well try and figure it out. So we focus mainly on starting companies try and do small production. We don't try and start full batch. If you want to start full batch, we have no issue getting you there. We try and figure out, hey, okay, let's make this many units and let's see how we can do them. Create a marketing campaign. Create a campaign that makes your brand look good and show that you're moving your production and moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's great. It's one of those things where it meets the moment. You mentioned business timing there, but it's also, there's an overwhelming sentiment for reshoring, made in America. I think you have some statistics on your website about the percentage of consumers that prefer to have their products made in America. That's also pretty surprising for Gen Z. But you described your model as making reshoring realistic and not risky. And you tapped into a few things there, but I want to double down. How does that work, removing the risky part?
When we look at taking on clients, we're not just taking you on for the profit of what you're going to pay us. There's a lot of companies, sadly, that their business models and the products they make, they just can't be made in the United States. If we're looking at super complex materials or if we're looking at super cheap products like companies like Shein, they would never be able to make in the United States. And that's just how the business model is made. There's also companies like Apple. They can't do manufacturing in the United States because their products are too complicated. But the same thing comes into the apparel. If we're working with multi-layer fabrics and stuff like that, you can't get that product. You can't make that material in the United States. And if you do, it's going to be crazy expensive. And some companies it doesn't make sense. So we want to look at your brand from a whole and see if it makes sense first. And then we break down from there, see what products we can get made, see what manufacturers we can connect you with. And then sometimes with companies that we get involved with, we've already pre-matched a previous company that makes similar products with that manufacturer. So we can move that company into that manufacturer as well. And we can speed up the process with American manufacturing by matching similar companies with the same manufacturer.
That's a lot of it. I think a lot of the complexities that we see when folks talk about reshoring, and maybe if you get into like heavier industrial or some of those types of things, when you're manufacturing in China, it's a lot of the IP is stuck there, right? Like you can't get the molds out and those types of things. And this seems a little bit less burdensome on the infrastructure, but something that materials are probably the primary cost driver. So that totally makes sense. You alluded to one other thing there that was really interesting. You do a total cost modeling process where you do that matching. What are some of the surprises that brands see when they look past just labor cost or material cost or those types of things?
I think one of the big things, especially with a very quickly changing world that we have now, is the speed at which they can get new products developed, new colorways developed, and stuff like that. So if we have companies and we're moving on small batch, we can quickly contact manufacturers, be like, okay, we want to change this colorway, or we want to get this new product made this way. And for a lot of companies that are looking into that vision of trying to be on the curve of the trend at all time, it's something that you can't deal with and do with Asia, because first of all, you have to deal with the freight shipping afterwards. So you're dealing with months and months of preparing in advance. And when you're doing domestically, there's no freight shipping. You can fly it for cheap costs. You can deliver it by truck. You don't have to worry about extended stuff. And a lot of the times, even we can match companies with manufacturers that are within hours drive away. So that makes it a big change. So you can go there and see your product being made. And we also try and turn that into the marketing thing is, hey, let's make a marketing story around your product being made here in America, because people don't want to see videos of your product being made in China, but people could be interested to be watching them being made in the United States.
No, that's a really good point. So many people are fascinated with the manufacturing process because they don't see it. They think that it is something that's, like you alluded to, Shine, and there's others like the Temu, and of course, Amazon does a lot of sourcing from Asia, particularly in China. And I think one other big thing that you tapped into was tariffs, freight volatility, lead times. These are things that are not going away. It's something that we've entered this new global era. Whether you are for them or against them, it is something that has not been here for a long time, and it is here now. And you surprised me, and you heard it here first. This is one of those things that people are surprised, or customers, just checking that I heard this right, customers are surprised with the speed and the matches that you can make, which has historically been one of the chief kind of complaints about reshoring. That's the cost is too high, the process is too slow, the inputs aren't right, those types of things. So it sounds like you're making really good matches on that front.
Yeah, especially you have to understand is like when we get involved with a company, we operate similar to what an employee would operate as, but we're very focused on single tasks. So we put all of our drive into finding the manufacturer, and that's our wake and day call for you. Instead of having an employee that's working on 6 different projects at once, we try and get it done as quickly as possible. And sometimes it can take longer, and sometimes it can take shorter. Just depends really what the product is.
Really good point. I've spent my time in the past looking for contract manufacturers and trying to figure out those supply chains. It's super complex. And if somebody's the point man on it, which is exactly what it sounds like your company does for really great brands, that's a huge administrative burden relief that people can walk through that process, know and understand a brand, and also tell the story of it on the other side, because this is a really great story. It's something that people are looking for. Let's dive into a little bit more company specific for you, because I was walking through your website and I saw some of the structures that you provide. And I thought this was really a critical thing to talk about, because it's, first of all, great branding on your part, or how you described it. Let's talk about the Heritage versus Pioneer editions. The Heritage edition, very clever idea, taking a really beloved product and reimagining it with U.S. craftsmanship, if I could umbrella term it like that. What's the response been like there?
That's definitely one of the main things that we work with, especially since companies don't want to put a lot of capital into developing a new product and stuff like that. It's a great response, definitely on that end. And a lot of companies, especially outdoor companies, have produced very similar products, or at least they've had like lines of products that they produced since they were made in America, and then they moved to Taiwan. So we try and bring those products back first, because first of all, we know they'll probably work here in the United States. And so it's basically just, that's, I'd say, the core part of our business. But we have to understand that American manufacturing is limited to what they can produce at times. So that's the big thing we focus on with the Pioneer Edition, is we try and build a product line that's centered around the capabilities of American manufacturing, while also holding your brand's core values to you. So let's say we're partnering with a factory that's really good at working with cons, and you guys have a couple con products, but you don't really know if you want to do work on specifically creating a product or taking one of your products that you have existing and moving it around and changing it so that it can fit directly into the American manufacturing system.
Yeah, that cultural fit is probably a pretty important thing because you think about it, and we've had some guests on this show and we've talked to people where I've seen in the early parts of their career, they were maybe taking things out of the United States, offshoring it for lower labor costs. And so you're taking an American brand, an American product. There is that element of, I don't want to say re-Americanizing it, but probably putting it back into American manufacturing processes, thinking through everything from quality to, and this is a little bit bigger than just some of the brands you work with, but injecting that back end to eliminate those concerns around speed, resources, materials, logistics, those types of things all take a kind of a reimagining when there's this kind of moment and concerted effort to really get it done. On the Pioneer Edition, how, without just maybe a general anonymous brand, how are forward-thinking brands using this to innovate and stand out? What's a best use case study that you can think of?
I'd say definitely we have one brand that was the Pioneer Edition. We use it. It's not as often that it's an edition that we use, like what that our core thing is. A lot of people want to do heritage, but when we do Pioneer Edition, a lot of the things that we look into are like we look down their products and we pull parts away that we know that this doesn't work, but we can replace it with this because America does a lot of like fabrics that are treated with polyurethane and stuff like that. So that makes it easy. So we can substitute that for the waterproofing. So instead of doing like a triple layer fabric that is super complicated and difficult to get in the United States. And a lot of brands really enjoy it because they get to build an entire line, usually on their website, that's perfectly sourced towards American made, because we don't recommend many companies to go full American made from the get-go. We think it's like a process thing, or you do it with one line just to say that you have it, which looks good for you and the other brands. So it's like when you can go onto someone's website and they have the product lines and then they just have the Made in America product line. We think that's just like a really powerful statement to have for a lot of brands.
Absolutely. It's a transition and it's a process, right? There's no full switch. And I think people are finding that out now. I saw anecdotally, there was something on X the other day about someone who thought that they made in America as much as they did, but they didn't realize where some of their down the line, second, third tier stuff came from. And it increased their costs a little bit, but it also moved it a little bit more local. So it washed out in the end. Shift focus a little bit because you said something about that Made in America and that appeal. And I want to talk about a couple of things that you hit on in the opening. Gen Z, sustainability, and what we could probably umbrella term global accountability around these types of themes. Let's talk Gen Z. What are you seeing from younger consumers and workers when it comes to the Made in the USA movement?
I don't really think my generation necessarily cares about where the product made. It's more about how the product's made. They care about the ethics behind the product, the sustainability behind the product. There's a lot of people, don't get me wrong, that just don't care. They just want it, or they can't afford to care about it, which is just a realistic thing. But the people that do care, it's not about where the product's made. It's about how it's made, what's used to make it, and how did its manufacturing impact the environment. And that's the big thing, is looking into it. Because in the United States, we have the ethical manufacturing, we have carbon dioxide laws and stuff like that. And if you even look at France right now, they just passed their fast fashion law. And that's just like a great representation of what's going to happen globally. If you think that's going to stay in France, it's going to continue to change. I believe that the entire EU will probably put that in place, not just France, that fast fashion is going to have marketing restraints on it. It's going to have environmental restraints on it. And it's going to become something that we see moving throughout the United States and probably the world more frequently. Because it's destroying the environment, the fast fashion movement.
Yeah, you mentioned that when we first met. We were talking about some of the gaps in what reality is versus what people are actually doing. And fast fashion, I chalk it up to, I remember a few years back when e-bikes and e-scooters became a big thing. And I remember watching reels or something on social media where they had this excess of bikes or scooters that were just probably getting dumped in the ocean because it was obsolete inventory or they didn't know how to get rid of it. So it does create a lot of waste, which is super interesting because most people don't think about the end stage life cycle of that product. But many people don't realize the US has some of the best environmental and labor standards in the world, while countries like China and India often lack enforceable protections. Why is this gap so important to highlight? And you also mentioned Taiwan, which I thought was interesting. I'll ask a follow-up on that here in a minute.
Unpredictability since COVID-19 is the new normal. We have increased costs are always jumping around. Inflation's moving. No one really knows where. Tariffs are now in place. So I think it's great to build a functional supply chain in America that you can rely on when push comes to shove
For sure. It's one of those things we talk about on this show pretty often, that reindustrialization is at heart a national security issue. It's fun to talk about a consumer product or consumer products because a lot of times that focuses on defense, industrial capacity type companies, our steel making capability. But where the US consumer sits and what we buy from the global market has so much to do with that. I told somebody at one point, are we even making our own Tylenol? Are we making things that are so critical for us that are in our daily lives? And when you look to the consumer market, they're the last mover, right? Because people have moved for offshore labor costs. They have moved for this labor arbitrage type structure or lower cost of materials, but then they're moving it all back. And that creates all those sustainability issues that you mentioned. Anecdotally, I think the other thing that I wanted to highlight on here was, we joked about, I think when we first met, was the Pacific garbage patch is floating island of trash in the ocean. It's not made up of US plastic. It's largely from countries with little regulation or waste control. And so back to the beginning, how should outdoor brands confront those kinds of contradictions, which I think you're providing a channel for them to do, but is there a lot more work to go on that?
There's definitely more work to go on it. It's a scary thought for a lot of brands to move production because it's not cheap. And that's the reality behind it. And so that's why we look at the smaller batch, trying to keep it cheap and see if it works out to see if we can scale further from it. And yeah, I think the big thing is all these outdoor brands, once again, they push this idea of outdoors. We do the products in outdoors, but is what they're like, donating money isn't just enough to get back to what your brand is meant for. You can't just donate money and expect the changes in the environment to start happening. You have to take action to start doing it. And a lot of these outdoor brands used to make products in America for the military and stuff like that. And over the years, they've just started cutting back more and more. Most of these outdoor brands they don't even produce a single product in the United States anymore. And if they do, it's probably the smallest thing they possibly can, like maybe a knitted beanie.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's a huge disparity. And it's one that is super interesting because you're tying it back into sustainability and what the next wave of consumers, we're just a couple of years away from basically millennials, Gen Z, even Gen Alpha being the primary consumers in the market and holders of what we would consider like traditional wealth. They want to know where it comes from, which is an interesting kind of closure point for people who want to make things in America. We see that all those types of labor law and environmental law, there's almost been a tendency for overregulation in some of it just because it's the right thing to do to make sure workers have a good place to go. They're treated fairly. And on the environmental side, it's just the right thing to do. But countries where we've offshored most of our manufacturing, like China, I saw a stat today that China has more greenhouse gas emissions than the entire rest of the developed world combined. It's a huge amount. So we've toured for the labor arbitrage in exchange for looking the other way on those types of sustainability factors, which just seems so at odds with the niche that you found, especially in outdoor brands. But that's pretty exciting and a lot of exciting things. What's next for Dusty Shores? Are you seeing the momentum build across other industries? Do you have aspirations for other verticals, or what's next for you guys?
Right now, we're just really focused on building up kind of our client base and also our connection base. But we've recently started looking into helping companies do American packaging, because American packaging is one of those things that's already on the cutting edge because it's low labor. And so the technology is always developing. So America's got probably some of the best packaging in the world. And when we're looking at tariffs and freight shipping as well, if you're already doing pre-packaging before you ship it on freights, that's increasing your costs exponentially, and it doesn't make sense. Here's my thing, is the way I look at it is packaging is the first thing your customer sees when they receive your product. So you might as well have a story behind it. And if you're just going to give them some nonsense stuff that just doesn't look good, there's no story behind it, then it's okay. Well, one thing Apple was the most famous for when they came out was their packaging. It's like that was the go-to, was, okay, wow, their packaging is beautiful. And you see it in the tech world. All the tech companies focus as much as they can on packaging. They put money into it. And I think it's about time consumer products and soft apparel businesses start putting some more effort into it and start trying to make a story behind their packaging. Because if they can't make their product in America, the least thing they can do is try and see how they can integrate America into their supply chain. And so I think packaging is a great place to start. It's low cost and it's low labor, and it's something you can do, and it costs for you if you're doing freight shipping because you don't have to ship with the extra weight.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You stole my example. I was going to have the follow-up there with Apple and kind of the experience of getting a new Apple product. They were really the pioneer on that. Even in past lives when we were manufacturing things, that was the gold standard. And then I was working in a little bit more of an industrial environment. It's, wait a minute, we have technicians just ripping this stuff open, and we've gone too far on the tech experience side of it, because it is much more of an experience for people to be able to get a package and they feel like the quality, the work, the craftsmanship, all of it is bundled together, which is a huge component in why it doesn't happen from overseas, because you're just adding tons of weight to the shipping chart. This is something I ask often of guests, but what does success look like for your company and maybe for the broader reshoring movement over the next 2 years? Because the time horizon on this type of stuff is very short. It's not something, of course, we can sit here and theorize about 20 years out, 10 years out, whatever it is. What does success look like on both fronts?
For us right now, we just want to become a go-to trusted source for companies to come to, whether they hire us or not, but seeing if they can make it work through us is our first step. We want to become the people in the outdoor industry and maybe even the soft apparel industry and hopefully maybe the packaging industry, where the companies come to us looking through sustainability, American manufacturing, looking to see how they can improve their brand image as well. Right now, I think at least in America and the reshoring movement, I think one of the biggest things that I would love to see is having made in America become a requirement for a lot of companies to get an investment. So I think like American product line, and it's not just because American product line looks like that, but in the world we're having right now, I personally believe that it's going to fractionalize. So the global economy is going to start breaking apart and global trade is going to start breaking apart a little bit, which is, I took this idea from a book by Peter Zehan, The End of the World is Just the Beginning. And so in my idea, it's for these investment companies to want to invest into an outdoor apparel or an apparel company. They want to make sure that it's foolproof and that it has a manufacturing place it can rely on after, let's say, something happens in China or a war breaks out in Asia, or if oil becomes more expensive and they can't get their products cheaper. It's become a thing now. I want American manufacturing to become a thing where it becomes the fallback option and there's almost a stronghold of companies to come to if stuff starts to break down.
That's a really good point, because you look at what's going on right now at the macro scale, there's certainly an upset to the established world order. If you look post-Cold War, I think people referred to it as a new world order, which I think is permanent, where our trade environment, it became something that was free trade, but was it fair trade? Was it free trade in the sense that American consumers were getting cheaper goods, but were they exporting as high quality of goods? Was our economy shifting to a services-based economy where we don't make things, where we don't build things? And all of those are super complex issues. And to your point, the investment requirement is something that is going to be necessary to get people finally motivated, just beyond whatever the things that we talk about, which are exciting and things that should be motivators in and of themselves for better products, better quality, better sustainability, but doing it in a way that kind of emboldens your country. You see a big shift to that in tech. And I think ultimately there's probably a shift to that in consumer products and outdoor goods. And somebody is probably waiting on the next great American brand. And if they want to do that, where can they find out more about it?
I think the best way people can find out about American manufacturing is just taking steps, getting on a call with us. We don't charge anything just for an exploratory call. Let's just take a look at your catalog. Let's take a look at what you're doing. And with us moving into packaging as well, we're trying to break into a little bit of the supplement industry is our big one. As supplement packaging is expensive and it's cheap to ship over the powders and stuff like that. So we think that's a great one. And it also ties into the outdoor industry because people that are usually taking supplements usually are also active people and worried about stuff like that. And I think supplements are a great one because the biggest reliant for supplements, I think, is their selling point is what does their packaging look like? Because they all look the same. It's all like a white powder or something in a pill form. So it's what's on the outside. And that's where I think American manufacturing could become a big thing because that's almost the central part of your product as a supplement manufacturer or supplement company.
Absolutely. No, there's so much creativity and so many things that can go into this. And I'm really excited to get to talk with you today and learn about it because it's people and companies like yours that are making the movement happen. It's not just big investment and big defense tech and those types of things. This is where the reshoring movement really gets its drive in, along with reindustrialization. Where can our listeners go to find out more about your company and potentially reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can go to dustyshores.com, DUSTYSHORE.com. And then you can just email me at Caden@dustyshores.com. You can come to my LinkedIn, Caden Gennerman. And yeah, I look forward to talking to anyone that wants to reach out. It's something I think it's fun because instead of looking at it as just a business expense, look at it as, well, what can make our product stand out? What can make our company stand out? And who knows, you can do super cool marketing campaigns, especially for outdoor companies. One thing I've always thought would be fun to push would be for an outdoor company, like one that has sponsored athletes, would be launching an American-made product line and then doing something big. I live in Park City, Utah, which is a huge outdoor community, and we have a lot of sponsored athletes here, and a lot of sponsored athletes are sponsored by the same companies that live here. And so like a company that was made here, for example, like Armada Skis, they are based here in Park City, and they do their production in Austria, which is also still great because they're owned by Aimer. But like, what if they made an American product line and did like a launch event here with a bunch of the athletes that are sponsored in the town they're from, with the athletes that live here as well? I don't know. I've always thought that would be something fun to do.
Absolutely. It's the theme of the story is 100% manufacturing is local, and from the most successful companies we've spoken to, they are doing it and they've been doing it, and now that message is out. So if you're going to find and build the next great American brand, be sure to reach out to Caden and Dusty Shores. Caden, thanks for coming on today. We appreciated it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to talk with any of your listeners that want to reach out to me.
To stay ahead of the curve and to help plan your strategy, please check out our website at variableapps.com and under the resources section titled Trump 2.0, where you can see the framework around upcoming policies and how they will impact you. If you're on socials, give us a follow on LinkedIn, X, Truth, or Instagram. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please feel free to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, and leave us a rating, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you again for joining us and learning more about how you can make your way.